something that has guided my thoughts about what to talk about in each episode really is just around big burning questions that I've received from music school owners over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're fine with me asking you a bunch of questions, we can dive into another one today.
I love them. I like big questions. 30,000 foot, 10,000 foot, 1,000 foot. Where are we at with this one?
Okay, so I'm going to set this up by telling you why this one seems so important to me. And it has to do with when you hired me as a marketing consultant for your school in 2020. I was talking to you and you made an offhand comment, and it struck me because it drives right to the heart to probably the number one question that I get from mid-sized to larger school owners.
Ba-boom.
And that is, you told me that you put out the word for a social media manager. Right. And you got something like, I can't remember now what the exact number was, but it was something like between 80 to 100 applications. And I was a little floored by that. And I asked some other questions around this and asked you some questions about, well, what about, when you hire for a teacher? And you told me, depending on what the instrument was, and again, I can't remember the exact numbers now because we're going on 2 years ago since you told me this, but the number was much higher than what I heard most school owners share with me as their experience. And so I'm just going to kick the podcast off with a question. And this is the form of the question. How does Brooklyn Music Factory get 10, 20, 30, 40 applicants for a music teacher position when you put out the word that you need a piano teacher or a guitar teacher?
Right.
And I'll end as soon as I kind of follow that question up with the kind of reverse image of that question, which is how and why is it so hard for most music schools across the US, across different countries I've worked with in Europe or Australia? Why is it so hard for those folks to find people, find teachers for their school, when this is probably the number one question or problem that I get? Oh man, I put out an application and no one responded, or I got like 2 people and they were terrible. So let's just dive into this topic,
Yeah, dig it. So this is so common, right? It's like I posted on Craigslist or an Indeed ad, and I got 2 people, and neither one of them. Actually, we just heard this from a client, and neither one of them are qualified at all. And if we were to just dig in deeply to why this is so aggravating for us, it's because we can oftentimes live in a state of panic. What happens when a teacher leaves and I need to fill the position? Like in a week, in 2 weeks, what if they leave and give me no notice? And now all of a sudden I'm the one subbing until we find a new teacher. And so we really need to solve the issue. How do you actually hire efficiently? Right? Because that's really, and so I actually think the question is slightly different than,
how do you get so many applicants, or how do you get a lot of applicants?
But rather it's, how do you ensure that every time you get enough quality applicants that you can fill the needed position? So another way that I ask this question is, how many quality applicants do I need to interview to result in one rock solid hire? Right? So what is that ratio? Do I need to do 10 interviews in order to hire one teacher? Do I need to do 3 interviews in order to hire one teacher? Could I possibly even get it down to only 2 interviews to hire one great A+ teacher? So let's sort of diffuse the situation ever so slightly for a moment. It's, of course, totally frustrating. I mean, I'm sure everybody listening here is like, man, I know exactly what that feels like, to just be coming up short on quality teachers, right? Or quality hires.
From your experience, was this ever a problem at BMF in the early days?
Well, so in the early days, and I've talked about this before, like I made the most basic rookie mistake ever, which was I just hired all my friends. Yeah. And it's not like they weren't awesome, because I love them and I still play music with them. But it's like I knew them on the bandstand. I didn't know them in the classroom.
But was there ever a time where you put out an application, you run out of friends to hire and you put
Yeah.
out applications and you came up short? Did that ever happen to you all?
Yeah, totally happened to us. So I would say it wasn't until 5 to 6 years into the life of the company where we were like, wait a minute, we actually need to build a repeatable system around attracting really quality applicants and then being hyper efficient with our time, because there's only so much time that you can afford to invest in the hiring process. So I would say early on, we would be like, honestly, the mistake that most people make is they hire the only person that applies.
Hmm.
So they don't even ask the question, how many applicants do I need? We didn't even
Right.
ask the question, how many applicants do we need? So you asked, did it ever happen to me at BMF or did it ever happen to us? 100% it happened to us because we were asking the wrong questions.
Okay. Now so right there, what you said, I think is interesting. I'm going to actually push on this a little bit more. Could, can you, with hindsight now, identify what you were doing wrong other than not asking the right questions? Like, are there some principles that someone could take away from this? Be like, you look back at Nate and your co-founder, from 5, 7, 10 years ago and say, okay, we were doing that, and that all led to the wrong thing. And maybe we can get later into the right thing to do, but can you identify some states of being, some ways of thinking, some actions that you were taking?
Okay, let me give you, and this will resonate, I bet you, with everyone listening. Let me give you 3 concrete examples of mistakes that we made that our listeners may also be making currently. Number 1, you need a piano teacher who's highly experienced to take over for a teacher that works with ages 4 to 8. The applicant that walks through the door is really good with, as he says, teenagers and college-age students. And you're so desperate that you're like, surely he can learn how to work with a 5-year-old. You're hired. So mistake number 1 is you're not being specific about what you need, and you're not patient enough, or you don't have the system in place to actually attract the right applicants. So instead, you just hire the first person who walks through the door who basically plays the correct instrument or roughly fits the description, but was never going to succeed in the position. So
would you trace that back to would you say that you're then saying that your job applications were not specific enough, or your job offers were not specific enough at the beginning?
I would say definitely that. They've become much more specific, and the interview process, we've become much more diligent in how we do it, right? And disciplined. In other words, it's not Nate alone in a room with an applicant anymore. It's always me tag teaming with someone else, and then us asking very specific questions and then grading the applicant on very specific points. All of this is built into the system that we've created so that I am not working on, I'm not being reactive, right? I'm actually being very disciplined and thoughtful as a potential, the person who is helping to make the hiring decision. And guess what? I'm not making the hiring decision alone anymore. Yes, Daniel, I can
go ahead. I can speak to the thoroughness of that, because when we had this conversation a while back, you actually showed me the hiring system that you had co-created with your team. 30 steps to it, super detailed, and we've even, I've even gotten more exposure to it as we've kind of helped studios that we're working with create their version of that, based on what you all created. Because I don't think I've ever seen a company the size that you all are that has something that detailed, which is pretty astounding. So let me just recap here. Desperation was a problem, a lack of specificity, a lack of sophistication in the interviewing process. I didn't hear anything in there, though, about what potentially caused you, how do I word this? Did you ever have a problem where you just didn't get enough applicants? Did that ever happen to you all?
Yeah, totally. So hiring is marketing. right?
Mm.
So put simply, hiring is marketing. You are trying to attract someone to your vision and your mission, right? They may need to be able to teach voice to a very specific age range, but ultimately someone's going to walk through the door because they resonate with what your purpose is as a music school. In our case, we are a fluency first approach, game based approach, songwriting program. It's pop and rock. There it is in a nutshell. Got it? So if you don't love, if you love writing original songs, if you love ear training and music theory, and you believe that everyone is welcome at the table from ages 4 on up, then you're going to be psyched to apply for a position at Brooklyn Music Factory, right? So we didn't always do that. Mistake number 2 is we thought that you just hire to teach because everybody wants to teach, right? Okay. The reality is no, you actually have to put together an enticing offer and be very specific about who you are and why someone would want to join your community. The third, I just had another mistake. Oh yeah, the third mistake, which is, and this gets to why you don't get enough applicants, right? The third mistake is you think you're hiring musicians. You're not. You are hiring educators. So start looking where educators hang out, right? In other words, look, Daniel, as you know, like the first 15 years of my career was as a touring jazz pianist. I taught piano to fund my passion for making records and going on the road. I will say now that I failed many of those students as an educator. I might have been a fun guy to hang out with. I might have been, play great piano, but that doesn't make me a great teacher. So the third thing we need to start doing when we want to try to attract more people that are interested in teaching is find out where they're hanging out, right?
Yeah.
And pursue them. So did we get enough applications early on? Hell no, we didn't. We didn't get enough because we kept thinking, we were hiring musicians. But just to be clear, and how I frame this question, how do you get 100 applicants? It's not about the number of applicants you get. It's about attracting quality applicants and knowing how many you need to interview to end up solving your hiring issue. Because hiring is a puzzle, right? So you're just...
What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is you're trying to figure out, given the department you're hiring to, because not every department is measured the same, is going to be some departments are going to be more difficult to hire to. For example, in our experience, you will have less of an issue hiring to your guitar department than you would hiring to your voice department. It takes the longest time and we need the most patience to hire effectively, for example, to our young group class program. Right? So, okay, that's what we're doing here. That's what we found. So let's just go through real quickly, just a couple of little tweaks that anybody can do around this. Okay.
Just for context, are these tweaks so that they get more applicants or so that they get better quality applicants? What are the tweaks for?
The latter, better quality applicants.
Better quality. Okay. So we're not so much worried about quantity. If we could put out a job application or a job offer for someone in the piano department, someone in the voice department, and we literally only got one, but it was the exact person we needed, who cares how many applications you got? Yes. You need one, So yeah, I think that is, you said it earlier, it's a misnomer, or it's maybe the wrong question to ask. Like, well, how do we get more people applying to the job? No, how do we get the one person we need? So yeah, that's good. So what are those tweaks you were talking about?
Okay. So number one, remember we were talking about an enticing offer. So you have a landing page to try to attract people, a parent to your school, and that parent hits your website and says, oh man, you've been working your butt off on trying to really get your messaging right and get a parent to pick up the phone or fill out a web form or whatever. You're basically going to put on that exact same hat, but you're going to imagine a whole bunch of music teachers looking at that landing page, right? So this isn't rocket science, but it's actually a step that we avoided for a long time. So, I mean, we didn't do it. We just thought, man, you just put an ad out on Indeed and surely people will apply. But the reality is, all you want to do is you want to get people to click through and land on that landing page, because that landing page is where you're going to begin to filter out those that are not the right fit. Notice what I said. That's not the landing page where you're going to start getting a whole bunch of people filling out the web form. That's the landing page is everyone who's worked. I mean, you know this far better than I do. But in marketing, what you're trying to do is get very precise about who actually fills out a web form. Right? We're not looking for
completely agree.
Yeah, we're not looking for 100 leads, 3 of which are of any value, because you've just wasted so many hours of your life on 97 low quality leads, right? So the same holds true for hiring a teacher. So what does that mean? We can't get into all the details about how to build a great landing page to hire, but you can start by looking, just go to Brooklyn Music Factory and look. We're about to open up our hiring funnel. Notice I called it a hiring funnel, much like a marketing funnel, right? You can go there and see we're going to hire for drum, beginning piano, and for our mini keys in our Jam Band 101 class. It's going to be 3 very specific landing pages based on which ad you found or which network we were reaching out to. Right. So anyways.
Now, before you go on to tweak number 2, and you're talking about landing pages there, I think this is a great opportunity for me to mention that the 7FMS podcast has a landing page. And you can find it at growyourmusicstudio.com/7FMS. And here's what I'd love people who are listening or watching to do. If you have a question for us, go there, enter your name, enter your question. We're happy to answer it. If we get enough, we might do a follow-up episode on this. If we get this within like a month of when this is published, we might do a follow-up episode where we do a Q&A. We might even do a live Q&A. And obviously, Nate can't go into this enormous system in great detail and something like this, but this is something that we've actually taught to some of our private clients. And it's something we've been able to go in depth with those folks because they were really committed to the idea of solving their hiring problem once and for all. So if you have any interest in that, you can hit us on that landing page as well. So I'm going to stop now, Nate, and throw it back over to you for tweak number 2 or to finish up tweak number 1.
Dude, it just occurred to me too that what would be cool if listeners wanted to put in, actually, some of you may already have like a landing page for hiring. Drop the URL in there, and maybe Daniel and I can take a peek at it. And if you're open, we can do a little critique.
Well, I think that so if they do, more power to them. I don't know if I've ever seen a school do that. Now, of course, I'm sure there's people out there who are like, well, we do that, and you haven't met me, of course. But I would just say with working with hundreds of music schools, for a hiring funnel, I've never seen someone have a hiring funnel as detailed as yours. So if you've already got a landing page, kudos to you, because you're in the top 0.1% of music schools in the world doing hiring right.
I love it. And, and again, as we talk about often, Daniel, like I'm just turning to my friends in the business community. And as one of my friends, Kate, puts it, she's like, Nate, you need to work on your hiring gauntlet. So it's like she inspired me years ago to refine that. So tweak number 2 is actually very simple. And I reached out to my partner earlier before this episode because I just wanted to ask, like, why are you so good with attracting high quality candidates for your camp? Tweak number 2 is be very specific on the page, right down to what it pays. You're like, what? We did not include what it pays for years. Daniel, we didn't start including the pay until I think 3 years ago or something. We just started including. And my partner's point was like, look, you just want to filter out those that are like No way. I've got, for example, I've got a private studio and I make $80 an hour. Well, of course you do, because you're running a private studio plus that
Right.
entire small business. So,
Right.
dang it, we're never going to pay $80 an hour. That's not, you don't join a community like Brooklyn Music Factory to make $80 an hour in a studio. You join it for all of the other benefits of the community. And so you want to put the pay there. So that's such a simple tweak. You also want to be very specific. Like, I remember when we finally added, you have to love kids. It's like so simple. You're like, of course you need to love kids, dude. Well, no, a lot of people come and think they actually don't have any idea what it means to work with children. The only students they've had is they taught like a couple of their neighbors who were like 14, and then they went to school and maybe they got a music education degree, or maybe they just went to music school or whatever they got out, but they've never actually taught a 7-year-old. And they might be an only child themselves, so they don't even come from a very big family or something. And so, like, you got to really love kids if you're going to apply for this specific job. I'm talking at Brooklyn Music Factory. If you're not hiring for a gig that's for, small children,
Right.
put that there. But but those type of tweaks are so basic, but we overlook them.
Yeah. I would jump in here and say that this is, I think, my this is where I jump in and make my weekly plea, or make my weekly commercial for when you're running a values-based business. You will know how to fill in the blank, because maybe for you it isn't must love kids. Although if you have a teaching studio for
Right.
children, it probably needs to be on there. But there's probably 3 or 4 or 5 other things that need to be on there that would be different than what was in my music school, or the music summer camp that I helped run for 10 years, or BMF, Nate's school. And it all comes back to those first principles and foundational values that if you have not sussed those out, it is going to be so hard to do hiring, so hard to do marketing, so hard to even to run a meeting potentially with your back office team, because you're just selling the time. You're just selling 45-minute music slots, as you so beautifully said, probably about a month ago. When you have those values hammered or nailed down, not hammered down, when you have those values nailed down, it becomes a lot easier to know how to lead off your job offer with something really rich and evocative and emotional, kind of like what you did, Nate, maybe 15 minutes ago, when you just rattled off what your pitch was for the marketing for finding a teacher. Like, it rolled off your tongue. Most schools can't do that, at least not in my experience.
You know what I just did, Daniel? Well, you obviously, this, but it's so near and dear to my heart, is because we didn't always lead with values, of course. It took us years before we realized that we even needed to state who we were and why we were, i.e., what was our mission. And then it took us another few years to be like, oh, my partner and I actually really value certain things. And so I went and looked at our current job description template, because I haven't looked at it in a minute, and we're about to open the hiring funnel. And let me just read you the opening. The first thing it says is, what's the role we're hiring for? Bold, right? So it's just like very specific. We're hiring for this thing. Second thing it says is, at Brooklyn Music Factory, we inspire musicians and build community. Then it doesn't even go into anything like pay and what schedule and blah, blah, blah. It goes straight into Brooklyn Music Factory lives and teaches by these core values. Be the best version of yourself. Be 100% engaged emotionally and intellectually, etc. We have 7 of them. Then it says, currently in bold, we are looking for this role. So it's saying the role again. We're still just only like, we haven't even reached the fold in the landing page yet.
Yeah, you're telling the story, yeah.
And then finally, it says, Brooklyn Music Factory, and this is a summer camp template, Brooklyn Music Factory Summer Camp is a songwriting and game-based band program for ages 5 through 12. I'm just highlighting how specific it is. So why is this so valuable? Because Daniel, I want to get back to this core principle that if you leave with nothing today, please leave with this. You're looking for ratio. You're trying to figure out how many quality applicants you need in order to end up solving your hiring puzzle, which is that specific role or those specific roles, right? So you're working backwards. Ultimately, like, let's say you begin to develop your system. You finish listening to this podcast and you're like, I'm all in. I'm doing it. Daniel, Nate, I'm building a hiring funnel. So you build a website and you build that landing page. It's good enough. You create a job description that you think is enticing, etc. You even come up with some cool interview questions. Awesome. Love it. What your job right now is to define that 3 years from now, when you've tested out and refined your hiring system, you can answer this question clearly. It is going to take us X number of interviews in order to achieve one hire. It is going to take us X number of applicants in order to arrive at X number of interviews. It is going to take us X number of visits to the landing page to have X number of applicants to arrive at, you know where I'm going. So that's where you're trying to go 100%. To. It sounds totally wonky. You're like, Nate, I'm never going to do that. You will do that. Because eventually you're just going to get so burnt on having to make it up every time that you're going to be like, no, I'm going to figure out a system that I can trust every season when it comes time to hiring. Because Daniel, you and I both know we'll be hiring season after season.
Yeah.
So
you're going to do it or you're not going to scale. And that's just the truth of it. Because what you just described there was actually the practical numbers of what a funnel actually is. And for anyone who's done like a marketing training with Grow Your Music Studio, one of the very first things we teach is you're not just looking for more students. It's actually far more important to understand why you're not getting them now. And it's actually possible to diagnose what the problem is with just a couple numbers. And so if this number's off, it means this. If this number's off, it means this. If this number's off, it means this. But you will never know where to focus your efforts unless you actually start collecting that data. Well, similarly, for what you're talking about, and wrapping it back around to the comments you made about 20 minutes ago in regards to hiring teachers is actually a marketing job.
Yes.
You can actually start to track those numbers and you can see where the weak points are in the system at a certain point. And that's when you really start to cook with gasoline, so to speak, is when you can actually look at the numbers of, we got this many applicants, this actually came through an interview, and can then begin to identify and diagnose where the issue is, and then start to work on that point in the hiring funnel.
So can we bring it down to just like, can I tell a real story about what's about to happen right now, since we're literally about to start hiring?
Let's do it.
And then maybe this is a good wrapping point, because the original question was, how
do you get more applicants?
Yeah, how do we get more applicants? And so I want to end where you started, because it's easy to get. If anybody out there listening is like me, it's easy to listen to a podcast like this and then sort of end it. You're inspired because you're like, man, it'd be awesome if I could create a system that was bulletproof. But in reality, you get done listening and then you're just like kind of overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And like that feeling sucks. And I know that feeling well. And I remember actually when I was deep diving into marketing, where I started consuming too much and then my to-do list got too big and then I was paralyzed. I was like, oh, I'm not doing anything then, Anywho, then I met you and things got better. But that's a different story. But like, so we're about to hire. So what are we going to actually do to arrive at enough interviews? Right? So I want to just give you a couple of very simple things that you can do now if you're about to hire like us. So first of all, look at your network. Take like 10 minutes and just write down name after name after name of anyone and everyone who you think might be interested in helping. Your Uncle Henry, your Aunt Jane, your mom, your friend, your classmates, everybody, write them down. Then compose a simple little pitch. Hey, I'm super excited because at my music school, where we teach, where we teach an ear before eye approach on how to tackle, the repertoire or something, whatever your little pitch is, put that down, write it down. We're hiring now for a piano teacher, and I'm so excited to have someone join our community. Do you know anyone who might be a good fit? Right? Cut and paste that into texts or emails to that network. And then hopefully, of course, your Aunt Jane's going to write back, oh, I might know someone. And then, so she shares one person. And then you say, and Daniel, you do this so well. You go to those people and you say, hey, are you interested? You were recommended as someone who'd be a great fit for this. They say, actually, I'm not available. And you say, could you suggest 3 people that you might think might be interested in this position? Give them very specific numbers. You need 3 names. Would you consider introducing me? Right? So that's step 1. Okay. Step 2 is just make a very simple landing page, taking 1 or 2 of the tweaks that we suggested, and give them somewhere where they can land. Give them a URL that they can go to learn more, and then fill out make it a Google form. I don't care what they fill out. We use Google Forms, right? We have super fancy, landing pages and have all of the bells and whistles for automated marketing and sales and blah, blah, blah. But when it comes to hiring, we use a lot of Google. So give it a simple little Google form. And here's the thing. When you compose a Google form that has a couple of questions that you think are important, what do you ask them? Some simple questions like, what do you excel at as a teacher? And then go to something that's super important to you and your values and your mission. For example, we always ask, building community is so important at Brooklyn Music Factory. Can you tell us what community means to you? So that's it. And then say, thank you so much. And they submit. Okay. Do those 2 little tweaks. So do your spider web networking, web that sucker out, get a bunch of names, and then send them to something intriguing. And see how many people actually answer the questions.
100%. And like you said, I think that could be a good place to end things. But what, just as a closing thought for me, and then I'll ping it back over to you to make sure that you're complete. But, this is high level, and I'm aware of it. You're aware of it. And I'm certain that if folks are struggling with this, they realize this is high level too. The devil's in the details, and what should that landing page look like? What does a good follow-up email look like to a candidate? What do you do in an interview? Like, these are all topics we can go deeper on. And if there is interest in going deeper on certain things, we're never going to know unless, those who are listening and watching reach out. So yeah, definitely let us know. GardenMusicStudio.com/7FMS. And we will do everything from answer questions to help you solve the problem. Because we certainly are happy to go much more in depth and actually help someone build, a hiring funnel out or great marketing out if they have commitment to solving that problem. So that's kind of where I think I would end up with this. Nate, how about you?
Just one last little item, and I love that. Yeah. Send us your thoughts, questions, comments, concerns. Push back if you hear something that you like.
I love the pushback. Right? Yeah.
Didn't work. I'd love to know about that. Last thing I'll say is do not forget the community that's right in front of you. So, for example, the very first place that I turned when we were considering hiring for these classes for our youngins was our own faculty. I just went straight to, a couple of our A players and was just like, hey, you're amazing, and we're about to open up these new classes, and of course I want to start with you. So don't forget who's right there, right? Because it's
the internal referral. Yeah.
The internal referral or the internal rehire. Someone's already working for you, and you're like, hey, are you ready to level up? You want to add more? You know, that's all I got. It's a like we've talked about in other past episodes, Daniel. It's if this question is coming up, it means it's going to come up again and again. So
Yep.
let's all work. Let's all commit to working on finding sustainable solutions, so that we,
Yep.
focus on what we love, which is, teaching music, transforming lives, that kind of thing.